Hey everybody, welcome to EduMatch. So thank you so much for joining us for our special episode. Tonight we are talking to none other than Dr. Sheldon Eakins. Hey Sheldon, how are you today?
I am doing good. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Oh, super excited to have you on here. Thank you so much for making the time and for chatting with us tonight. So for those of you who don't know Dr. Sheldon Eakins, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. If you could tell us a little bit about your background and who or what inspired you to go into education.
Okay, yeah. So I taught in a classroom history. So I was a history education major back in those college days, and so I took my time doing that primarily in private schools. And so in that meantime, I worked on my master's in leadership, and then also I eventually got a PhD. But yeah, history was my subject. I also taught religion as well. Currently, I work as the special education director for the Shoshone School District, which is a small school district here in good old Fort Hall, Idaho. So yeah, it's been a great journey so far. I've been recently just actually started that job back in November. So still kind of fresh legs, still new to it, to the position. But I've been learning so much and had a great opportunity to meet some awesome kids.
Oh, that is excellent. They are definitely lucky to have you there. So awesomeness and congrats on the new beginning. So tell us a little bit about some of your educational passions.
Educational passions. Oh, and sir, I did not answer your other question. What got me into education? So I got to bring that one in too. Um, but as far as education passion, I represent 0.8% of African Americans in the whole state of Idaho. Um, Prior to that, I lived in Oregon. I was a school principal in Oregon, and just kind of I never thought I would, growing up in Houston, Texas, I never thought I would end up migrating to this area. But some of my passions include just trying to ensure that there's equity. I've seen a lot of things, and I love living in Idaho. So don't get me wrong, but I've seen a lot of things where it's just a lot of folks just maybe just don't have experience with people of color, especially for Black folks. And so I find myself educating and taking certain moments or experiences that I have as a way to not necessarily lash out or react in a I guess just be upset. I try to make sure that my responses are educational. So that's kind of where my podcast kind of started, was just it's all about equity, and it's all about ensuring that each student, not just all students, but each student gets the services, whatever resources, everything that they need, whether that's culturally relevant pedagogy, whether that's just uh, making sure that they have lunch to eat. Just those little things to make sure that we're keeping in mind that students need to have their individual needs met. Now, to answer your question prior, how I got into education. So I had a really cool history teacher. His name was Mr. Fielder, awesome guy. When I was in the 12th grade, and he taught us history slash basketball coach. And so I said, you know what, man, this is the coolest guy ever. I want to be just like this man when I grew up. And so when I went to college, that's what I majored in. I majored in history, and then I first teaching job. You know what I did? I coached basketball, and I got to teach history. So that was how I got into the field of education.
Yeah, we definitely have that in common, the basketball coaching. Oh my goodness. That is a different world than, it's funny. You get to see a different side of the kids and also a different side of their parents, right?
And a different side of the coach too, slash teacher. Sometimes it can get heated. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I hear you. Totally hear you on that. But I was definitely rocking with everything that you were saying also about your passions and making sure that students have everything that they need. And also, representing that 0.8% of your state. So I'm definitely rocking with you on that. So we've been connected now for a couple of months. I
Yeah.
first connected with you in the RJ League Voxer group. So what has been your experience with restorative justice?
That's a good question because I'm not in an official environment that practices restorative justice. However, I've been trying to throw little things every now and then. So, for example, I work in SPED, and so I had a student that was kind of challenging to one of our teachers, and she came to me and talked to me about some of the scenarios that had happened, some of the situations that had occurred within the last couple of weeks. And so I felt that it was a time for us to circle up. And so that's what we did. The three of us, we sat down and we kind of just talked today. We talked about, what had happened, some of those occurrences that had happened. I was able to bring in a teacher's perspective, and she was able to share how that made her feel. And the student was able to share how he felt. And I felt like there was a good resolution as far as, they both, I guess, made some compromises and agreed on certain things going forward. And so I felt that it was good, and I followed up with the teacher afterwards, and she was very excited. She felt like there was a good breakthrough. I talked to the student, and he felt like, he was kind of, I guess he felt like there was some progress, but he was still kind of like, still processing things, I guess. And so that was good. Like I said, it's not official, and I know I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. I'm still learning. Being a part of the RJ League and the Boxer Group has been very helpful and beneficial because not only are the educators in that room providing resources, but like I could easily, do a Vox with one of the members within the group and say, hey, I got a quick question. These are the things I'm thinking about. What are your thoughts? And like some of the experts like Victor or Demetrius, some of them, they'll respond and let me know that here's some thoughts, here's some pointers, here's some things that you can go with. So from my own professional development, selfishly, I love being in the Boxer Group because you get to learn, so much, and a lot of the stories that the group shares. So it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Great group of people, very knowledgeable, very open and willing to share. So yes, it's been great learning with you and from you in that group. So awesomeness. So in that group, you talked one day about your podcast, and I'm a huge podcast junkie, so I was just like, oh, let me check it out. So I've been hooked ever since I started listening. I think like ever since that day, I have not missed an episode from that day on. So I know that you mentioned it a little in your introduction, but tell us a little more about Leading Equity, please.
Sure, and my humble thank you. I appreciate any listeners, and that's why I do it. I will go back to July. So I just started the podcast back in July, and I was at a point in the summer. You know how summer is. You're educated. You're always thinking, what am I going to do for the next, what's coming up for the school year? And so I was thinking about doing a blog, but then I had a colleague that introduced me to podcasting. And so I started looking up various education podcasts, and I mean, there's some great podcasts out there. I wasn't finding podcasts that would consistently speak about subjects such as equity and diversity and inclusion, those kind of subjects on a consistent basis. So every now and then I would hear an episode here or there. A lot of times a person of color that might be on those shows would be the one talking about diversity, and it wouldn't be much more than that. Like usually if I saw someone of color, that was usually the topic that came up. So I said, you know what, and it was early on in my podcast search career that I just didn't find anything. I just could not find anything that was consistently speaking about equity. And so I started, and I said, let me just start with it. And it's always that first episode. It's like, do I want to put this out there to the world? I'm going public, it's one of those kind of situations. But I just said, let's do this. Let's roll with it. And it's been a learning process. Over time I've been able to speak to other podcasters and kind of get some ideas and kind of see how they do things, how their workflow is, and how they're managing their time. And it's just been a great journey. And basically the focus of the podcast is to ensure that, those who are listening, my goal is to get those who are into it, who are listening to, um, you know, make sure that they're ensuring equity within their whatever setting they're in. And there's always a big difference between equality and equity. So it's going beyond just making sure everyone has the same playing field. You want to make sure that each individual is getting what they need. And so that's what each episode is about. And so I appreciate the listeners. Um, it's been a great. I've met so many people. I've learned so much. Even me as a person of color. I mean, there's things that I just automatically. Oh yeah, I've lived this life. I know everything, and I'm just fine. I know I don't know everything. There's so much that I don't know, and it's research based, or it's more, if it's not theoretical, it's more practical. Just things I haven't thought about or considered, and I just every episode, every person I've talked to, I've been able to gain some knowledge and to learn some things.
Yeah, absolutely. So much great insight shared from you and from your guests on that podcast. So everybody who's interested, please check that out. You will love it. So leading equity, excellent, excellent. So we're going to shift gears for a quick second. So Dr. Eakins, many of our listeners are also working on their own higher learning. So tell us a little bit about your PhD journey. What is it in, and do you have any tips for anyone also on that road?
Okay, yeah. So I got my PhD in K-12 education through Capella University. Graduated, was it 2015? Yeah, April of 2015 was when I did my defense. Man, it's been that long. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Time just goes by. Anyway, I digress. So for those who are considering going into a PhD, first of all, I definitely encourage you to do it. I'm a full supporter of education and getting as much knowledge as you can. So it's, whether you have a family or whether you're single or, whatever you have going on in your personal life, because a lot of people that I talk to about, now I'm kind of considering and thinking about it, it's always the time management concerns or, the home life situation, work situation, those kind of things. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's a commitment. It's challenging. If you're going for, whatever you're going for, it's probably going to be at least 3 years. And so you gotta be willing to make that commitment. However, it will pay off. I would believe that a lot of doors have been opened. A lot of notoriety or just that not prestige. What's the word I'm looking for? More of the whole. I respect. Like, I want to hear what you have to say because you're addressed as doctor first, and that has made a lot of difference in my world. I've always had thoughts and ideas, and I would always be willing to share those things with other educators, whether it's my supervisor or whoever. But I sense a difference with the amount of respect or maybe the appreciation or being asked to speak in certain areas or being asked to do letters of recommendation, those kind of things, because they know that you have that title behind your name. So I would definitely encourage anyone that's interested in pursuing a doctorate to go for it. It's I mean, Sarah, you could probably speak on this. I mean, it's an amazing thing to accomplish a goal, to not give up. I mean, there's been times where I was like, oh, I don't know. Comps exams is coming up. I don't know. How am I going to drop this 50 page in a few weeks? But, at the end of the day, like I said, it pays off.
Absolutely. It pays off in so many ways. And I'm glad I had myself muted because I was over here cracking up when you were talking about how it'll be challenging. Yes, that's the longest 10.5 years of my life right there. But I'm so glad. Well, I'm glad it's over, but I'm glad I did it. So I can definitely agree with what you're saying. So, okay. All right. Awesome. So we talked a lot about your work in equity and inclusion. And prior to the show, I reached out about maybe some topics that might interest you to discuss. And one of the ones that you brought up were microaggressions. So for anyone who doesn't know, then what are microaggressions? What exactly is a microaggression?
So I'm not going to give you the Webster's dictionary version. So microaggressions are they can be intentional or unintentional gestures, maybe, or comments made towards a particularly marginalized group. Okay, so that could be gender, race, sexual orientation, disabilities, those kind of things. So I'll give you an example because there was a microaggression that I did myself to someone, and I had to check myself. So I was a principal, and we were having school lunch, and so one of my students who's Mexican, they were serving Mexican food, and so he said he didn't want beans, and I said, wait, you don't want any beans? I thought everyone, all Mexicans eat beans, right? And he just gave me this look, and he was like, Mr. Eakins, that's a stereotype. All Mexicans don't eat beans. I don't like beans. And I was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. You're totally right. Like, I just stereotyped you. I didn't tell him it was a microaggression, but I was like, man, in my mind, I'm like, dude, I just hit him up with something that I can't, like, it triggers me, you know what I'm saying? So just that alone. So anything that sorts of, and again, it's a lot of times it's unintentional. Like, that situation was unintentional on my part, right? But then sometimes it is, intentional. It's passive aggressive way that I could possibly be racist towards someone. I don't keep myself up like I should when it comes to working out, but I got a little something on me, right? And so I can't tell you how many times people would automatically assume that I play football, right? They see me being black, they see, I have some sort of athletic look to myself. They automatically assume that I must play football. I've had to argue with people and tell them, no, I do not play football. Oh, come on, you got to be a running back. I said, no, I played one season in 7th grade. That's it, right? And I was a wide receiver. I mean, I was a lot lighter than this, but it's like I don't play football. Or you just assume that a black person plays basketball, or like I did. I assume that all Mexicans eat beans and maybe rice and tortillas and those kind of things. Like, those are microaggressions. And again, living in Idaho, I deal with it a lot on a daily basis, almost, at least weekly basis. I come home with a story to tell. I used, before the job that I have now, I used to spend my time in high schools, and I worked with 17 different high schools, and there was at least 2 or 3 schools that I would dread going to because I knew some point in that day I would face some sort of a microaggression, whether if I could tell if it was on purpose or if it was real subtle and passive, but like, I knew I would come home with a story to tell. So that's why when you ask me, hey, what do you want to talk about, Sheldon? I'm like, I probably experienced a couple of microaggressions today, so let's talk about that.
Yes, I totally hear you on that. And I've been experiencing quite a few, throughout this entire lifetime, but I feel like they picked up recently, very recently. Like, one time I blogged about this. This was back in September. I was coming back from the airport, or coming back from a conference, and my bag came out of the carousel. It was one of the first ones that came out. So, I took it, I saw my tag, saw my name, whatever, thought it was all good. So I took the bag, started heading towards the door. Next thing this guy's running at me, and he's just like, are you sure that's your bag? And I'm just like, I couldn't even say anything because I was so angry. But I just showed him the tag with my name on it. So I feel you 100%. It's crazy. It's crazy. So you've already kind of answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So why are microaggressions so problematic?
Why are microaggressions so? It triggers people. It puts you like you said, like your mouth dropped, right? And it throws you off. And sometimes depending on the intensity, I would say it could mess your day up. Like you could be sitting there thinking about, man, I can't believe this happened to me. And we can choose, like I said earlier in our conversation, like I could choose to use this as a teachable moment, or I could react, and then it's that, hey, am I going to become an angry black man? Am I going to look like a thug if I react in a certain way? You have those choices that you have to make, and it's like you said, it can be problematic. So just imagine a student, like maybe my experience with that kid when we were at school. I mean, it was at lunch. So how do I know that he didn't go through the rest of his day? Even though I apologized, but what if I didn't apologize? What if I just brushed off what he said to me? Like his response when I said, "Oh, you don't eat beans," and like that, just he had to go to class, and he's thinking about, it's on his mind, and so now he's not focused. It could throw you off. And again, it's not always on purpose, but it a lot of times it comes from our own biases that we have, and we all have biases. And I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have done some sort of a microaggression towards others. And so if we can recognize that we're doing those things, then I think that's very valuable with how we can help improve ourselves.
Yeah, so that leads right into the next question. So how can somebody know if they've committed a microaggression, and how can they atone for making a microaggression?
Oh, that is a good question. I would say we don't always know, to be honest, especially if it's unintentional. We don't always recognize. I think one of the things is if someone calls you out on it, please be open to hearing that and having that conversation. Sometimes, like I said earlier, I mean, when I was arguing when I was arguing with an individual that just knew I played football, I just, you know what? I said, do you play golf? You look like you play golf. And then he finally I think it finally clicked, because I'm like, you're automatically assuming that I play football, so I'm just gonna just pretend like I automatically assume that you play golf or hockey or lacrosse or something like that, because you're looking at me, so I'm gonna look at you. And so he eventually stopped. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like, if you internalize, like, let's say you reflect and you go throughout your day and you're like, here's some interactions that I had with some students. I remember I was having, chat with someone, and it just got weird after that. And then why did it get weird? Could it have been something that I said? Um, I, I've had an experience where I've worked with an individual that was a very strong feminist. And so once I recognized that she was feminist, I was always trying to be mindful of the things that I was saying. Or if I have students that are transgender, or they're maybe they're thinking about it. They're kind of in that stage. I'm not really sure where they're at, and it's like I had a conversation with a student. I said, "How do you want me to address you? Is it he? Is it she? Is it they? What would you prefer?" Because I'm trying to be mindful of being respectful to this individual. And so we had a conversation about it, and he said either or is fine with him. And I said, okay, are you sure? And he said, yeah, either or is fine with me. And I said, okay, so then I'm going to address you that way. But again, I think if we're mindful of there's differences, that whole, if we don't use that, I don't see color, that verbiage, but you're like, I do see you have color, or I do see that you are a female, or, like, if I do see these things and I'm willing to ask questions, like, don't be afraid to ask. I ask all the time, like, hey, listen, I don't know much, forgive my ignorance, but blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times people are very happy and open to share with you what they prefer to be addressed as, I'd rather be addressed as Black, or I'd rather be addressed as African American, or I'd rather be Hispanic or Latinx. Like, they'll tell you, but just ask. Just ask. And I think that's one of the best ways that we can check ourselves and make sure that we are being respectful of others.
Yes, that communication is clutch in so many ways. So I agree 100%. Keeping the lines of communication open, keeping respect at the core. I just wanted to give a quick shout out. I see that there's folks joining us on the YouTube live. So hello to Michael and to Marvia and to Tamara. So thank you all so much for chiming in with your comments as well. They're having a great conversation on the YouTube live with lots of perspectives. So definitely saving the chat so that I can post it later when the episode posts on our WordPress. So okay, so you just dropped the mic several times right now. So all right, so we've talked about experiencing microaggressions. Me personally, I usually tend to freeze up like a deer in headlights, but I feel the hurt and the frustration after I've like truly processed. So what kind of advice could you give to someone who's on the receiving end of a microaggression?
I'm not gonna lie. There's been times that I just been so shocked that I have been just speechless. Like, oh my gosh, like I don't even have a response at this time. But then there's times that I'm like, oh no, I know you didn't just say that to me. So, like for example, me and my wife went on a date to a bowling alley, and there's no one there. It was just pretty much me and her, and maybe another couple or another person bowling. But like when we went to get our shoes and our, pay our way, they're like, don't be making all that loud noise, or don't. He said something like, don't make a bunch of noise because we want to be respectful of others. And I said, do you say that to everyone that comes in here? And he just stopped. And I was like, you know what? We don't even want, like, I don't even want to bowl. Like, I didn't want to bowl there anymore. Like there's no one there. Why are you telling me and my wife to, like, we're some kids, high school kids, telling us, yeah, you don't be making all that noise. I'm like, I know you don't say that to everybody. You're saying that to us. So I think for those who are on the receiving end, I mean, you have a bunch of ways that you can respond. For me, whenever I can, and like I said, sometimes it's just, man, it just threw me off. Because I mean, microaggressions, you aren't expecting, you're not sitting there waiting necessarily for a microaggression to show up, right? So a lot of times it catches off guard. But sometimes just been times where it's just like, man, I'm just so thrown off. It just like I don't even know how to respond. So you can respond a few ways. I like to use these moments as teachable moments. I like to say, you know what you just said is a stereotype. And no, I had a colleague that was sharing with me about her niece or someone close to her was Black and had natural hair. And so she was saying, oh, she got this crazy hair. And I was like, well, you have to keep in mind that if that's the way her hair grows naturally, then you can't say that the person just has this wild, crazy hair. This is the way that her hair is. Like, this is how her hair grows naturally. I know societies, a lot of the mainstream culture is saying that, your hair needs to be pressed down and laid down on. I get that, but you can't just say that this person has this crazy hair when you're not considering that this is culturally, like, this is a thing, like, this is how her hair grows. So again, that was me taking a teachable moment. Like, I could have just been like, oh, no, I could have said those things, but instead I was like, you know what you just said, here's some things to keep in mind, or here's some, can I put a different perspective in your way? And a lot of times people are open. It takes some training, if you will, because if you asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have been, depending on what it is, I'm ready to fight. But I'm not there anymore. It's more of, okay, let's talk about that. What you just said, and how do you think that might make someone feel if you make a comment that way? So that is what I would suggest. Obviously, you can you can get angry, and I think it's okay to be upset, and I think it's okay to be angry. I think it's the way that you respond. Um, it's more helpful in my experience to be able to take this time as a just a call out, a subtle call out. You subtly microaggress me, and I'm gonna subtly microaggress you back in a way. So that's how I look at things.
I hear you. I hear you definitely. So, so that's tying in also with that communication piece. So, I love that. I love that. So when people know better, they can do better next time. So, so absolutely. All right. So let's talk about one more stakeholder in this process. So witnesses to microaggressions. So, sometimes people say bystanders. I've heard people start using the term upstanders. So what are some ways that witnesses can best, serve as resources in standing up against microaggressions?
You know what? Not everybody is going to respond. So let's say I'm the one that got a microaggression came at me. I might just be in a shock, or I may not just respond, or I might want to walk away, or turn the other cheek type of mentality. I think if there are bystanders, if there's witnesses around, I think it's really good to be vocal and provide a voice. If that individual is maybe they're just too stunned, or they're just not in a place to where they can respond, that's an opportunity for you to say something. Don't I always when I get these kind of questions, I always think about what's my man on Dateline, Quinones, with the what would you
John
do?
Quinones, yeah.
Yeah. I always think about him because they put you in those scenarios where they set it up to where maybe someone's being mistreated. Often someone's being mistreated, and they say, well, what would you do? And I always try to think, what if this is that moment right now? What if John is back in a restaurant somewhere in his van? There's a van across the street. It's unmarked. I don't know who's in there, right? And what if this is that moment to where they're gonna jump out and be like, "Well, here's the footage. You didn't do anything. What are your thoughts? What were you thinking during this?" I don't. You don't want to be that person, right? So I think overall, it's we should speak up, and maybe I'm being extreme, but you get what I'm saying. Like, what if this is that moment where someone's watching you, or that individual that just had that microaggression come their way, they need someone to be in their corner. And that can be a student, that can be a parent, that can be another teacher, a principal, whoever. Sometimes they just need someone in their corner. And being able to stand up and say, no, that's wrong. Like, look what you're doing. And checking people. And like I said, and if that individual is the first to respond, join in. Just because that person says something, a microaggression comes to me and I respond to it, doesn't mean, oh, okay, it's been handled. They got this already. No, don't be like, if you have something to say something.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. And I agree. I'm thinking on like recent incidents that we hear about in the news and the role that the witnesses have played in, bringing people to justice. Like, for example, that incident at Starbucks, and the lady like live streamed it or recorded it, and several incidents like that, like with technology now in our pocket, and we can live stream and we can do all kinds of things to just put an end to it. So, and to stand up and let people know that it will not be tolerated. So, so I love your perspective on that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So you have some exciting things going on, and you are just killing it all around. So, I'm going to ask you, what can we expect to see from you in the near future?
What do you expect to see? I think I have some surprise I can't reveal right now. right? But I have some things that I'm planning to roll out this summer. So if you are a subscriber to the podcast, Leading Equity, shout out, definitely I encourage you to join in because I have something special happening this summer. Um, One of the things that I do on the side is my wife and I, we run a nonprofit called the Active Student. And basically, the Active Student is a nonprofit that supports students that are from disadvantaged backgrounds and helping them be successful throughout high school, throughout elementary, middle school, high school, and then through college. Because again, I'm a component of getting your education. And so we have down the road, hopefully next summer, we're hoping to roll out a conference. So that will be not this coming summer, but the following summer. So that's down the road. Otherwise, I want to just continue to produce content for listeners who selfishly, I started it because, I wanted to learn more and I wanted to be able to share that with others. So those are a couple of things that I have. And like I said, it's a secret coming up this summer, but stay tuned. It's coming out.
Okay, I'm so here for that, and I know everybody else is too. So that is awesome. And in the Twitter chat, I'm just kind of going through and seeing some great comments. Marvia was saying that she'd like to hear more, have resources to share to equip herself and other educators, regarding, I believe, the microaggressions discussion. So would love to have you back for like maybe a tweet and talk where we can go even more in depth on the topic if you're up for that.
I'm in.
Yes.
Anytime.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
All
in.
right. So stay tuned for part 2 of this conversation. Okay, awesome. So how can people learn more about you or get in touch with you online?
You can go to my website, SheldonEakins.com. That's Eakins is spelled Eakins. I know it looks like Eakins, but it's SheldonEakins.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Sheldon Eakins, and I do have LinkedIn, and also I have a Facebook. So all under Sheldon Eakins. So I try to brand it real easy, so I won't forget my passwords and usernames. So that's where you can find me best. I publish new episodes of the Leading Equity podcast every Monday and Thursday.
Oops. All right. Fantastic. That is awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with us, Dr. Eakins. It was great, chatting with you, hearing your insight, and hearing more about you. So it was definitely a pleasure having you here on EduMatch.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who is tuning in. So great conversation on the YouTube Live. So definitely saving this chat so that we can post that as well along with the episode. So speaking of the episode, we will be posting it. So it's available here on Facebook Live. In addition, it'll be available on Facebook within a few weeks and on as a podcast. So definitely tune in for that. In addition, speaking of tuning in, tune in, same bad time, same bad channel. Well, not same bad time, same bad channel as this, but as we usually do Tweet and Talk, we're coming back for Tweet and Talk on Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern. So that's going to be this week. We're going to have Dr. Sam Fesich, and she will be discussing EduMagic. So helping pre-service teachers, get ready and already be that educator of excellence that's within them. So that's going to be great. Still room on panel, so you can sign up if you're interested. Podcast with an s.edumatch.org/sign up if you want to be on panel for that. So it's going to be 6 o'clock. So with all that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign off. So everybody have a great rest of your week and see you Sunday night.